What's up, guys? So as you can see in the title and thumbnail of this video, this is kind of like a pretty serious subject and topic that's affected me a lot mentally as an artist, especially over the past few years, as I'm sure it's affected a lot of you guys. So it's something I've been wanting to talk about for a while and kind of give my perspective on. So we're going to dive into that. But before, I just want to show you guys something. So I just got around to framing and hanging a few pieces of art around my house. These three are 16 by 20s on canvas that I did probably like 2 or 3 years ago and had them kicking around for a while. Didn't really know what to do with them, but I found these super cool neon acrylic frames. So I framed each one in sort of a different color that kind of matches with the color scheme in each piece. So super stoked on these guys. And then this is honestly probably my favorite piece right now. It's a lot different than any of my other works, but what makes it so special is each strip is a cut piece of canvas from a painting throughout the years. So it's sort of like a time capsule in a sense. So it sort of captures the textures and different sort of eras of styles that I worked through throughout the past 10 years. So yeah, I'm really hyped on that. Yeah, so more on the topic here. It definitely got to a point over the past few years where I finished working on a painting, and the first thing I'd worry about was posting it on Instagram and worrying about how many likes, how many comments, how many shares it's gonna get, and not really take the time to sort of decide how I truly felt about it. So I was pretty much just creating for the algorithm in a sense. And this mindset really started to kill my love for art. So yeah, we're gonna head down into the studio. I have a painting from last year that I sort of want to rework a little bit, add a few things to, and we're really gonna dive into the subject a little more. All right, so here's the piece I'm gonna be reworking a little bit today. Honestly, love it how it is. It's my favorite, I think. I know I say this a lot, this is my all-time favorite painting I've done, I think. Just the vibe of it, the colors. Yeah, I didn't put this one up for sale either because we've had this in our house for the past year. And just seeing it every day, I figured there's a few little areas I could add a few things to. So we're gonna go ahead and do that. Sweet. So I've been asking myself a few questions recently about Instagram and how it's impacted me as an artist and sort of evolved my way of thinking. And the first question I came up with is, how has it changed the way that I create? And I think that comes down to a few main points. The first being sort of the pressure that it's caused me, the pressure that's caused me to put on myself. Also, creating in a way to get likes, so like chasing likes, chasing trends. And then the impact it's had on my identity as an artist. So getting into the first point a little bit about the pressure that it's caused me to put on myself. This sort of goes back to the beginning when I started my art career, which is like 2016, and that's sort of when I discovered Instagram. And back then it just felt so different. Like Instagram as a whole just felt so refreshing, and you could go on there and get so much inspiration. And it wasn't just so oversaturated with high speed clickbait stuff. And it kind of exposed me to seeing what other artists were doing and kind of opened my mind up to like the possibilities. And that gave me something to strive for, so that was good. But fast forward, gaining followers and attention on social media it causes me to put a lot of pressure on myself to maintain. And the thing is, these, like, having a huge following doesn't even translate to sales. It doesn't translate to success or connection. So really, what are you putting pressure on to maintain there? You know, the follower count doesn't really matter. It caused me to sort of create in a way that I got stuck in a loop of creating things that I didn't really want to create just because I knew it would get likes. And that is a huge problem, because then you're just chasing trends, and when you do that, you don't give yourself the time to learn and improve on your actual craft, right? You're kind of just bouncing from one thing to another. And I feel like that is very easy to get sucked into, especially as a younger artist starting out. You know, you want to, it's good to experiment for sure, but you don't want to veer off too far of your original sort of vibe and what makes you unique. And that sort of brings me to my point on your artist identity and how it affects your identity. Identity is super important, something you need to maintain as an artist because it's what separates you. And you know, when you're chasing trends and trying to keep up with the algorithm constantly, you lose that. You lose it very quickly, and you're losing what makes you unique. And you can't have a successful art career without that. You know, you always need to maintain a strong identity. And that brings me to my next question. Am I creating art or am I creating content? And just to show you guys what I'm doing here, I'm just going ahead and adding in a few little doodles and imagery around this butterfly here. I want the butterfly to be sort of the main focal point. And I feel like it always was. I just maybe want it to be a little bit stronger. So yeah, just adding a few little pops of color around it with these, you know, clouds and lightning bolts. And then I'm just gonna go ahead and do some line work on those. Check it out. So when I think about art versus content, I think the biggest thing that comes to mind is the process. And you know, there's nothing wrong with creating content, which I think is obviously helpful and important to a business, but I think the problem comes when it becomes more about content and less about the art. And in that, you sort of lose the process, at least for me. One of the big things is, when I started art, I fell in love with the process. Like, I loved to, you know, sit there, spend a few hours on a painting and kind of just zone out, kind of let all my worries go away. But when you get more to that mindset of creating for the content of Instagram, it's sort of, you sort of lose that. Like, you don't enjoy the process as much anymore. And like, honestly, for me, I started to feel like sort of like a I don't know, a machine or a circus monkey, just creating as fast as I could so I can get stuff out there, so I can get the likes, get the positive feedback. And that's honestly terrible for art, because art should never be rushed, firstly, and yeah, when you when you're not enjoying the process, you're obviously not making your best work, and that really leads into the next thing, which I think is like the biggest problem with social media, is the dopamine addiction. It's just a constant loop, a constant thing you're trying to feed, right? And you need that quick hit, so you're making things as fast as you can, right? You're losing that process of what makes the art, like what makes it special. The sort of dopamine addiction and dopamine loop that you get stuck in was a huge problem for me, and it, like, I'm not gonna say it's not a problem anymore, because it definitely still is something that affects me, but there was a point where I would, like, the amount of likes and comments I would get, the success of my posts would sort of dictate my mood, which was terrible, because I was basing my self-worth on the algorithm at that point. My self-worth as an artist, at least. And this really made me question my true talent and vision. Like, if a post would flop, I would feel like shit, right? I would get these thoughts in my head like, oh, I'm not good enough. It's just my art's terrible. People don't like it. But that is not the case. And you should never think that way. You should always be very mindful of how Instagram, how social media is impacting you, and just don't let it get to that point. Because for me, when it gets to that point, I just don't want to create art at all. So this next one's huge for a ton of people. I know it's been probably, like, honestly, the biggest thing for me is comparison and imposter syndrome. Like, it's so easy to compare yourself online to other people and other artists when you're only seeing a highlight reel of their life. Like, you're not even getting an accurate representation of reality, because nobody posts that kind of stuff. Nobody posts the hard times and the struggles. It's all the wins. So when that's all you're seeing, it's easy to think that you're not doing as good. And that's a pretty shitty feeling, for sure. But you just got to know that that's not the truth. So a few of the things that I've started doing to resolve this have been, number one, and probably most importantly, is creating for myself. Like this piece right here, I made this solely for myself, not with the intention that it was going to be a huge success on social media. Like, it is pretty different than most of the artwork that I post. And this piece has a lot of meaning behind it and more of a story. I did a whole series, actually not a whole series, but three, like a series of 3 of these paintings. that contained the monarch. And the story behind that was last summer, I believe, my wife and I visited a monarch sanctuary on Pelee Island in Canada, Ontario. And we got to see like the cocoons and like learn about their whole life cycle. So that was pretty cool, and that kind of inspired this. Another thing I've been doing is spending less time on Instagram, making, just quick, meaningless content and stuff for likes, and trying to lean into still creating content, but over here on YouTube, I feel like it's a little different, where it's more valued to create longer form, deeper stuff that I think is more in line with art, and you're able to sort of take your time more and show the entire process and not be limited to posting a quick 30-second reel.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I think there's 3 main takeaways I can give you guys from this video. Number 1 would be to reflect on your own personal relationship with social media. Number 2 would be to prioritize creativity and personal growth over metrics. And number 3 is just to remind you that your art has value, even if it's not validated by the algorithm. And thank you guys for watching. Please drop a comment, like, subscribe, share, whatever. I appreciate it. Thanks.